everyone, it's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said well. You just heard Josh shake himself, so he's waking up too. There are quite a few changes that have happened around here. First, California has basically decided to continue the lockdown until August, which is no fun. However, they opened up the hiking trails again, and they opened up the dog parks, which means that we're going to go take Java to the dog park. And a couple of the cemeteries that had closed, they now have reopened. So we're also going to do a vlog that I had planned on doing before, and then when I showed up over there, the mausoleum was locked. So we'll actually do that today. And at the time that you see this, I will already have left this apartment. I put in my notice to move, I found a new apartment, and I will be out of Hollywood for good. So there you go. That's quite a few updates. Daze with Jordan the Lion begins now. And today will also be a special Patreon sunglass vlog for Linda Million. I hope you enjoy this vlog, Linda. Sorry for the people complaining about the dirty windshields. There are no squeegees at the gas stations anymore. Time to see the friends. You already got a handful of them waiting for you here at the door. There, he's got some of his buddies. It's been a while since he's been here. There's a few dogs out here. He should have some fun for a little while, and then we'll head off to Hollywood Forever Cemetery since they've reopened it. This guy's the priority today. Once the dog park's open, that's always priority. So what we're gonna vlog today is the man who is credited as being the one who came up with the idea for Las Vegas. He's an infamous mobster who's known as Bugsy Siegel. And by the way, that is not a name that he liked to be called. He was called that as a nickname because he was Bugsy, also known as Crazy. Bugsy Siegel was involved in crime from the time that he was a kid till literally the moment he died. So today we're gonna go by the death or murder location and also his grave. So this dog park that we come to is actually out near the Burbank airport, and I've already noticed there's nowhere near as many airplanes flying overhead as there used to be. Just a wanderer. Just a wanderer, aren't you? Now he's actually excited. Okay, there's one. All right, we're out of here. Let's go drop off John and head off to Hollywood Forever. Sad as that. No dearly departed sign up there anymore. He got out in time, didn't he? Holy smoke. He would have been stuck with a museum that nobody could go in. All right, Benjamin Siegel is straight down at the mausoleum all the way at the end. That's the Jewish mausoleum. They have a sign asking that you wear your face mask while you're walking the ground, so once we get in the mausoleum, I'll lower it. And yes, the gates are open again. Oh wow, we're actually going to be talking about him. Or he's going to be mentioned today, so it's interesting that I would see him right away, Mo Sedway. All right. So usually there are a ton of flowers down here at Bugsy's crypt, so I see a bunch down there. That's probably it. This is also where they did Mickey's funeral in Rocky 3. Down there. Here it is. Lipstick prints everywhere. In loving memory from the family, Benjamin Siegel, also known as Bugsy. There you can see people have left a lot of coins and lipstick prints, some Advil. Bugsy Siegel was dashing, charismatic, and he also was very bugsy, very crazy. He got that name because when there was a killing that needed to happen, he would do it. Now, Benjamin Siegel was involved in criminal activity from the time he was even 10 years old. He was part of gangs, and he was out pushing over fruit carts and forcing the people that owned the carts to pay him $1 for protection, or else he was going to do it all the time. He would start doing crap games in the street, ended up getting involved in burglary, and like I said, he grew up in New York City, and so he was part of the Jewish gangs, and eventually that ended up pushing him into getting involved in the mafia. He was a pretty good hitman for them, and he would start out with like burglaries and being involved in prostitution, and at a young age, his early 20s, he was getting well known in the city because he was drawing a lot of attention to himself. He was dressing snazzy and fancy. He was staying at the nicest hotels, eating in the nicest places, paying for other people's meals, buying other people drinks, just making his presence known, and started rising up in the crime families. At the time, there were 2 crime bosses, and people that were rising in the ranks, like Lucky Luciano, needed these guys to be gone. And so one of them was executed in his office. They said that 2 men dressed as police officers came in and shot him, and that was later described to be done by the Jewish mafia, and that Benjamin Siegel was the man who finished that off. So once Prohibition was announced, and he and his pal Meyer Lansky had a gang together, it was the Bugs Meyer gang, they started to figure out ways of making money off of this prohibition. And one of the great ideas that they had was to go into the truck rental business. So that way they could have trucks coming and going all times of the day, and it would never be suspicious. And they really made a lot of money, got involved in so much other crime that they ended up paying off most all the police and everyone in town, and they never ever got in really any trouble. Nothing ever really stuck to Bugsy Siegel or any of the people that he was affiliated with at the time. Bugsy was involved in something called Murder Incorporated, and this was a bunch of these mobsters that would go and take care of problems, and they had taken care of the 2 mobsters that were holding Lucky Luciano back from bringing things into a new era. And so there was a man who was part of that who eventually started to sing or started to talk, and his name was Greenie, and Bugsy would end up killing Greenie and then having a whole trial that was coming towards him to lock him up forever, pretty much. So that would all happen once Bugsy was in Hollywood, but what would eventually get him there was the end of Prohibition happened, and so the mafia had to start finding ways of making money in addition to how they had been doing it before. Now they didn't have Prohibition to rely on, so Meyer Lansky took off to Cuba and started learning the casino game, and the family sent Bugsy out to Hollywood to muscle in on the crime activity out here, which he did. He did his typical thing, flashing the blue eyes, dressing nice, going to nice fancy restaurants, paying other people's tabs, buying them drinks, paying off the cops in town. And he had an old friend from New York, George Raft. He reconnected with George Raft, and George was a well-known actor out here in Hollywood. And so Bugsy ended up doing a screen test, but really had no interest in that because he didn't want to be, under someone else's control. But he did see there was a lot of money to be made in Hollywood, and so he muscled his way into controlling the unions and the extras. And so they said that they could be filming, like say MGM or a studio could need a bunch of extras. Bugsy would supply those extras, and then once they were on the set and they were getting ready to do something, Bugsy could just decide to snap his fingers and say, they're not going to do anything until I get an extra so-and-so amount of money. And he would basically hold the extras hostage, knowing that they had no other option. Time is money, and they couldn't go get a bunch of other extras. So he ended up befriending a lot of famous
socialites and celebrities at the time. He was friends with Clark Gable and Jean Harlow, and of course George Raft, who I mentioned. But also, I found an interview with Benjamin Siegel's daughter where she told a story of, remember, coming home from school to their home and seeing Cary Grant sitting in their living room, and her getting to meet Cary Grant because he was a great friend of her father's. So he had really taken over Hollywood, and like I said, he was really charming, and so nothing that he ever did really stuck. So when he ended up shooting Greenie, that's where things started to change, because they started to investigate it, and Benjamin Siegel found out that they had 3 people that were going to testify against him that the police were not holding in custody. And so he found out, he was pretty sure that one of those men was his brother-in-law. They actually named the witnesses X, Y, and Z. And Y he thought was his brother-in-law, so he had his brother-in-law killed. The next man was thrown off of a roof or jumped off of a roof. Either way, he was no longer able to testify, and they basically ended up letting the case go because they figured with only one witness, they didn't have enough to do anything to Benjamin Siegel. And behind here, he was actually put in a $5,000 silver-lined casket. Which is kind of surprising to me because I thought most Jewish people were cremated. I thought that was tradition. And he was staunchly Jewish. There were stories about him wanting to, he was in Italy visiting a countess that he was friends with, and they said that at the time Goebbels was staying there as a guest of her husband, and that Bugsy wasn't happy about it and wanted to kill him while he was there. Now, through all of this crime, Bugsy was living a double life. He had a wife for 17 years, he had kids, and he just stashed them away. When he lived in New York, he put them in Scarsdale. They weren't a part of this, and he could live his whole double nightlife. And then once he came out here, he bought a mansion in Holmby Hills, put them there, and he would still go off and have his own place. He would have his own life. And while he was living out here, he would get a woman that he would become infatuated with named Virginia Hill. And she was working for the Chicago mob. They just, for some reason, lusted after each other to no end. And it was pretty tumultuous, but they were really similar in that they were very generous. And so when they got involved in anything business-wise together, they ran it very, very similarly. And this ended up taking them into going out to Las Vegas. And once they got out in Las Vegas, Bugsy had seen, they said, a mirage in the desert where he had seen that there were casinos out there, but they were old style casinos, or like not what we know today. This was like a rough and tumble western town, and the casinos were dirty and grimy. And he saw that maybe you could turn this place, because gambling had been legal there for 10 years, that you could take this land and open this oasis, like the nicest hotel with the nicest casino and all the nicest amenities that you could think of, everything all in one place. So his first move was he went out and he purchased a hotel called the El Cortez, kept that for about 6 months, turned it for a profit. And then there was a man named Billy Wilkerson who was a restaurateur here in Los Angeles, but he was building the Flamingo out in Las Vegas at the time, and he was a degenerate gambler. And his son even said he used to gamble $500 to $1,000 minimum per day, and he ended up getting into financial trouble and couldn't finish the Flamingo. So one day Bugsy and Mo Sedway, that we saw when we walked in, showed up at the construction site and said, "We're your new partners," and basically bought in with the mob's money, and then eventually pushed Billy out. And what they ended up doing was he had the basis of what was going to happen going, even though Bugsy would take a lot of the credit for it. But Bugsy would make this big announcement that he was going to have this grand place finished within the year, and that it would open at Christmas. And everyone that was involved said, "There's no way. You really should push this back. There's no way." And he wouldn't, and he demanded on running everything as well, every side of the business. And so he ended up having a budget of $1 million that the Lucky Luciano and his mafia gang were investing in, and Bugsy was running it, and it was just going above and beyond the budget. Eventually it would get up to a $4 million budget. The construction was a total catastrophe because you couldn't get everything done in the time he wanted. Plus, since he was trying to oversee everything himself, they were sneaking things past him. Like, he would buy palm trees, which were expensive enough as it was, that he was bringing in from Southern California. But unbeknownst to him, at the end of the day, they would drive those right back down to Southern California and then charge him again. He would be charged 2 or 3 times for many of the palm trees and the plate settings and all the things, because he wanted everything to be the best that money could buy. And that's what was really pushing this out of control with the budget. And he ended up opening it when he said at Christmas, but he didn't have anywhere near all of it done. He only had the showroom, the restaurant, and the casino done, so there were no hotel rooms for anyone to stay. There was a massive rain, so a lot of people didn't come, and celebrities that were supposed to come from LA didn't come. And even though they opened, it was a total disaster, and he ended up having to close it for a month and do everything. And then he turned it around, and it was starting to do okay, but the mob wanted an account for what he was spending, and he couldn't provide it, or he didn't want to provide it, and they decided that something had to be done. The crime family was not okay with this going way over budget, and they actually thought that Bugsy had pretty much overstayed his welcome at the Flamingo. And so we're gonna go out to now where it all ended for Bugsy. Or sorry, Benjamin. So as we head back out, we'll stop at Mo's crypt again. So Mo here was involved from the very beginning, the first trip out there that they decided to start doing this whole Las Vegas idea, and Bugsy's idea was really what bloomed into what Las Vegas is now. But Mo ended up taking over after what happens where we're going to now. Mo ended up taking over the Flamingo and made it a success. He was part of the crime family as well, and ended up being entrusted with the success of the Flamingo. All right, now we're headed off to Virginia Hill's house on Linden Drive. She actually had 2 houses at the time. One was the Falcon's Lair that Rudolph Valentino lived in at the end of his life, and the other was this house on Linden. Good to see the Formosas open again. I love that even though Tower Records is gone, they dressed it up like Tower Records a long time ago and never changed it. Here we can see a little bit of the Sunset Strip. So this is a really nice area of Beverly Hills, and this is right where Howard Hughes crashes playing that time. The house is right over here. It was June 20th, 1947. Ben Siegel that day had hung out with George Raft. He had had a few business meetings about the Flamingo, and then ran into another friend, went out and had dinner with him and Virginia Hill's brother and her girlfriend, or his girlfriend. And then they came back here to Virginia Hill's house. Virginia Hill wasn't here. It's said or rumored that she was tipped off and told to stay away from him during this time, and that she was in Europe. So they came back here 10:30 at night. Right in through there, they said that a man would have crept up through the shrubbery and fired shots right through the wall. 8 shots, 3 of them hitting Ben Siegel, 1 of them coming out of his face, actually like going in the back, coming out, breaking his neck. 1 shot actually took his eye out. So it was an instantaneous death. This was, I guess, the easiest way that they believe that the mob thought to get him out of the Flamingo. It's crazy. I mean, this guy lasted a long time. He was one of the most fierce gangsters of his day, and he didn't even see it coming. There are all kinds of theories as to who did it or why it was done, but I think generally they except that it was a inside job. Really nice house though. I think it would have been right in there. There you can see some of the windows. Virginia Hill had a really bizarre way of passing as well. Said that she fell in love after Ben passed and got married, and then eventually moved off to Europe, and then was found dead on top of a mountain. And they believe, or they credit it to suicide, but a lot of speculation was that she just knew too much and was too much of a risk. Just a few houses down, the back of this house is where Howard Hughes crashes playing that time, but we'll do that vlog another time. Alright, Lionhearts, thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed that vlog today. We'll see you all next time. Thank you, Terry Cato and Stephen Gunter, for becoming my newest Patreons. Thank you all for watching. Have a great night. Goodbye!